Back once again to Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small. My co-host, Paul Ogden. We're coming to you on February 4th, 2012 from Big Cat Books. Broad Ripple, it's on the north side of Indianapolis, 6510 Cornell Avenue. World Book Night is April 23, 2012. Go for details to worldbooknight.org, www.worldbooknight.org. Do you need to say www anymore?
I think everyone gets it.
I think so too. They've got excellent books. William Henry Harrison's biography, for example, which is probably riveting reading, and I am going to buy it.
There's a reason it's so short, though. You can't sell a pamphlet. I mean, the only thing shorter is Russian naval victories.
He was territorial governor of Indiana.
Yes, that's true. Our guests today are Mike Kole, is Libertarian Party candidate for Secretary of State in 2006. He also has the blog Kole the Hard Facts. Spelled K-O-L-E. And Jeff Cox, who's a frequent guest of the program. We're discussing the best, worst, and mediocre presidents of the United States. And you were in mid-comment, Mike, when we had to cut short that last segment.
Yeah, I really didn't pick any fourth and a fifth. I really limited myself to the third because I felt that there was a great gulf between the top three, and it really drops off quite a bit from there.
Okay, Jeff, tell us what picks you have that aren't, I mean, and if they are, we won't discuss the ones that have already been picked, and then we can tell you why you're wrong.
I'm never wrong. First, I'd have to pick Lincoln. We've already talked about him. I think you're really straining to find something wrong with Lincoln in his conduct of the Civil War. I just think it's a pretty tortured argument, the suspension of habeas corpus aside.
Okay, well, we'll just put that aside.
Yeah.
The basic reason why the government has to show why you're in custody. We'll put that aside for just a
There are
moment.
certain things you got to do in a war.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead.
And I'd put George Washington up there too. Most of these are wartime presidents I'm picking out. Because, being the father of a country is very, very difficult.
Yeah, but Washington wasn't president during a war.
It was pretty close. I mean, we were struggling to survive as a country. The French were raiding our shipping. It's basically the same thing when you're the first president of a country.
Those nasty Frenchmen. They would come in
right.
and take our ships.
They supported us during the Revolutionary War so that they would have a weak country to pick on and hurt England at the same time. That's exactly what. It wasn't any sort of altruism on their part.
And then they tried to push on us their deep-fried pieces of potatoes so we'd get heart disease.
Number 3.
Franklin Roosevelt.
Okay. I actually have him on my list.
He saw the threat that Hitler represented before most people did. He fought the war properly, aggressively, for unconditional surrender. What he did on the economy, it wasn't perfect, but he tried. And that counts for something. It's better than just sitting there and doing, nothing. It's like, well, try something, try anything. It might work. I thought that was worth it, and not all of them worked. Some of them did. And he also, at a time when the country was worse off than it is now, when people were really, really scared, people were starving, he took the time to. He was the first one to do this. The fireside chats. It's not like campaigning was today. He was actually there trying to calm the people, trying to soothe them. He cared about their mental well-being and was trying to, keep their spirits up. He wasn't, campaigning. It wasn't a campaign type deal. He was actually saying, "I understand. Here, here's what we're going to do." He was trying to soothe spirits there, and that counts for a lot. He was the first person to do that, and I think it was very important.
4.
Ronald Reagan.
Go ahead.
We kind of predicted that reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we tried to have a bet on it, but we all agreed on it. So
Tell us why Reagan,
because
I can say ditto.
the damage that Jimmy Carter did was so tremendous in terms of our defense and foreign policy. He presented an image of strength.
Just a second.
He presented an
Go ahead.
image that was going to scare our rivals across the sea. And that is important. It's less important to be loved than it is to be feared, because people will try to avoid crossing you then. Rome was both loved and feared. Rome was pretty good to peoples that it conquered or that it allied with, but if you crossed them, they would be ruthless. And that's what Reagan did up until the stupid deal with the Iranians to give them weapons. The Iranian mullahs were scared of us, they were scared of Reagan and what he would do to them until he started selling them weapons to get the hostages out of Lebanon. That was monumentally stupid.
Okay.
But otherwise...
Number 5.
Number 5, I'd have to say, and this is going to sound like another strange one, but I'd put Truman up there.
Okay.
For much the same reason as Reagan. He was taking over at the end of World War II. He made a decision to use the atomic bomb on Japan, which saved thousands of American lives and likely hundreds of thousands of Japanese lives because we wouldn't have had to invade Japan then. He maintained a strong defense in the face of Russian or Soviet provocation after that. And I think that was very important to come out of World War II with that sense of strength and trying to keep battered Western Europe together.
Okay.
We can go back to Reagan for a minute. He decimated our economy. He grossly inflated the military for no reason at all.
Wait a second. Decimated the economy.
They're the largest peacetime expansion in
We had the
history.
largest peacetime expansion in the economy.
Yeah, we're going to have to explain that.
Okay. By cutting taxes for the wealthy, he laid the groundwork for what has happened today. The only reason the economy blossomed while he was president, 2 reasons. One, Volcker had cut the money supply to cause a recession, so that was before his entering office. And 2, there was a worldwide glut on oil. There was oil that was really cheap. And why? Because Iran and Iraq were at war with one another. Wait a second. And so they were trying to undercut each other on prices. So our economy really took off for nothing he did. After he was shot on March 31st, 1981, he really wasn't functioning very much as president. And so he screwed up our economy long term. He was one of the worst presidents we had in that regard.
That's really reaching.
Actually, it's not really reaching, and I think that I know I'm the one left-wing person on here, but I think that...
Let me do my list, and then you can hammer on Reagan some more. I have Abe Lincoln, George Washington. I'm going to skip over the one nobody's talked about. FDR, Ronald Reagan. I grew up in the Cold War. It ended because of what Ronald Reagan did, and I don't agree with you on the economy. I know you're going to hit me on that, but Thomas Jefferson was on my list. One no one's mentioned, personal favorite of mine is Teddy Roosevelt. You should like him. He's very aggressive militarily, but that's not necessarily why I like him. It's just he brought America into the modern century. He changed things and changed people's perception of the presidency, and he was really one of the few, besides Lincoln, early strong presidents.
And he was an accident.
He
wasn't meant to be president.
Right.
They wanted to get him out of office as governor of New York because he was being so aggressive against corporations there. Mm-hmm. They figured, put him in the office of president, which I think Johnson said about the office of president. It's or vice president. It's about the same as a bucket of warm piss. Actually, is what he said.
Okay.
Yeah, they attribute it as spit, but it's understood what he really said.
Yeah, but he also built the modern Navy too. So.
Well, okay.
Okay, so your turn, Mark.
Okay, my 5.
Reagan first.
Oh, yeah, right. Have to do Washington for the reasons that we've discussed before. I'd have to put in FDR because I think FDR, from one standpoint, can be seen as the president that prevented the United States becoming either fascist or communist. And by communist, I mean Bolshevik. Because of the turmoil that we were in at that time and the things that he did. I would have to say Lincoln because I can't verbalize exactly those qualities that he exemplified, but he did things that were right, that worked. Washington, Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, FDR, and then my last one is Teddy Roosevelt.
All right. So if you can excoriate Reagan for the economy, what do you feel about FDR's internment of the Japanese?
Oh, it's absolutely horrendous. That was
And
one-
for me, that's so big, that takes him off the top 5 list.
Well,
It puts him way down.
See, but that's the thing about any one of the presidents. You look at Washington and Jefferson.
That's so big, because how on the one hand can you identify Nazism for what it is, and intern the Japanese? I don't know how anyone reconciles that. I really don't.
Let me put it to you this way: the internment camps were not intended to kill the Japanese. It was not Nazism.
I understand, but
That's a really big leap there that you're making.
Well, no,
it's the deprivation of their freedom, and
I understand that, and
And
it
they're
was
probably-
wrong, but it wasn't meant to kill them.
Well-
That's what the Nazi death camps were about.
Yeah, but Mike, I agree as far as the scope, and also in terms of the negative things of FDR vetoing anti-lynching statutes, of FDR trying to keep the Solid South together. I look at anyone who's occupied that office, any one of them can be said to have committed felonies, and that was one of my qualities that I said in the first segment. They've done things that have been horrendous and horrible, but in trying to recover economically this country where it was and prevent it from going a different direction, that's why I think FDR was great. And I don't really have an argument that says, yeah, and we can morally justify what he did to people who were not of our color. And you look at the other presidents that arguably are great. Truman integrated the military.
Andrew Jackson is this gentleman's list is number 2.
Oh, Andrew
We didn't
Jackson was
mention-
horrible. He was responsible for genocide of the Native Americans, the Trail of Tears. He was a slaveholder, and he was an asshole. I'm sorry, but he was generally not a very good person, and he was a horrible president.
Yet the Democrats have Jackson, Jefferson Day dinners. So.
Yeah, and I think that's just something. Well, I've never attended one.
Well, you probably never been invited, Mark.
Actually, I have been.
I didn't start this. I'm not touching it. Not going to do it. Not going.
I'm looking over his list. James Polk is number 9. Everyone else who we mentioned, besides Andrew Jackson, who he put second.
Yeah, I think he was horrendous. Now, overall, what does that mean in terms of our selection of a president today? I mean, do we, and it goes back to my question at the start, do we really want to have in office a person with the personality traits necessary to be elected president of the United States?
Well, you're talking about giving up your soul in order to be elected.
You know,
Having to sell yourself out.
Well, here's the thing. Would you rather have a Caesar?
Sid Caesar had a very good series. I loved him.
Never saw him. Never saw him. I saw Little Caesar.
And Marx, look, I thought Groucho was great. Harpo didn't have a lot to say. Gummo you never saw.
and John Lennon, Marx,
but they were all smarter than Karl Marx.
Well,
you know, I mean, the thing that you can never forecast is the sort of crisis that will occur and what will happen. I think Lincoln is the only one where, you know, you could see it coming.
oh yeah, you can see the train.
But you know,
Well, there's some trains you can see coming.
right. I mean, when Roosevelt took office in '33, you know, you really, I mean, yeah, you could have started to see the Nazi.
Well, not when he took office, but as it got worse and worse,
Sure.
he saw the threat.
Sure, but that's not what the people elected him on. Is
No.
what I'm getting at. And most of the time, presidents get elected on a set of things, economic, et cetera, et cetera.
And I'm sorry, Mike, we're right at the end, but Hitler took office for the same reasons and being elected for the same reasons that Roosevelt, 2 months before Roosevelt was elected, or 2 months after, for the same reason. We got to go. Thank you very much. Join us next week. We're going to be discussing the efficacy of third parties with representatives of the Socialist Party and the Constitutional Party. Maybe we'll get a libertarian. Thank you.